something just very relaxing. So today I am going to read a fairy tale. It's been a little while since I've done that, so yeah. We are going to be reading a fairy tale, The Grimm's Brothers, and we might as well just get right into it. I found this one called The Grateful Beasts, and I thought it sounded really cute. So I figured we would read this one and see what it's like, because the past couple ones we have been reading have been very similar stories. So I'm hoping this one might be a little bit different. So, The Grateful Beasts. A certain man who had lost almost all his money resolved to set off with the little that was left him and travel into the wide world. Then the first place he came to was a village, where the young people were running around, crying and shouting. "What is the matter?" he asked. "See here," answered they. "We have got a mouse that we make dance to please us. Do look at him. What a droll sight this is! How he jumps about!" But the man pitied the poor little thing and said, "Let the mouse go, and I will give you money." So he gave them some, and took the mouse, and let him run. And he soon jumped into a hole that was close by, and was out of their reach. Then he travelled on, and came to another village, and there the children had got a donkey, that they made stand on its hind legs, and tumble, at which they laughed and shouted, and gave the poor beast no rest. So the good man gave them also some money to let the poor donkey alone. At the next village he came to, the young people had got a bear that had been taught to dance, and they were flogging the poor thing sadly. Then he gave them too some money to let the beast go. The bear was very glad to get on his 4 feet, and seemed quite happy. But the man had now given away all the money he had in the world, and had not a shilling in his pocket. Then he said to himself, "The king has heaps of gold in his treasury that he never uses. I cannot die of hunger. I hope I shall be forgiven if I borrow a little, and when I get rich again I will repay it all." Then he managed to get into the treasury, and took very little money. But as he came out, the king's guards saw him. So they said he was a thief, and took him to the judge, and he was sentenced to be thrown into the water in a box. The lid of the box was full of holes to let in air, and a jug of water and a loaf of bread were given to him. Whilst he was swimming along in the water very sorrowfully, he heard something nibbling and biting at the lock, and all of a sudden it fell off. The lid flew open, and there stood his old friend, the little mouse, who had done him this service. And then came the donkey and the bear, and pulled the box ashore, and all helped him because he had been kind to them. But now they did not know what to do next, and began to consult together, when on a sudden a wave threw on the shore a beautiful white stone that looked like an egg. Then the bear said, That's a lucky thing. This is the wonderful stone, and whoever has it may have everything else that he wishes. So the man went and picked up the stone, and wished for a place and a garden and a stud of horses. And his wish was fulfilled as soon as he made it, and there he lived in his castle and garden, with fine stables and horses, and all was so grand and beautiful that he never could wonder and gaze at it enough. After some time the merchants passed by. The merchants passed by that way. "See," they said, "this is a princely place. The last time we were here it was nothing but a desert waste." They were very curious to know how all this had happened, so they went in and asked the master of the palace how it had been so quickly raised. "I have done nothing myself," he answered. "It was all the wonderful stone that did it all." "What a strange stone that must be," they said. Then he invited them in and showed it to them. They asked him whether he would sell it, and offered him all their goods for it. And the goods seemed so fine and costly that he quite forgot that the stone would bring him in a moment 1,000 better and richer things, and he agreed to make the bargain. Scarcely was the stone, however, out of his hands before all his riches were gone, and he found himself sitting in his box in the water, with the jug of water and loaf of bread by his side. The grateful beasts, but the mouse found she could not nibble off the lock this time, and it was a great deal stronger than before. Then the bear said, "We must find the wonderful stone again, or all our endeavors will be fruitless." The merchants, meantime, had taken up their abode in the palace. So away went the 3 friends, and when they came near, the bear said, "Mouse, go in and look through the keyhole, and see where the stone is kept. You are small, nobody will see you." Mouse did as she was told, but soon came back and said, "Bad news! I have looked in, and the stone hangs under the looking-glass by the red silk string, and on each side of it sits a great cat, with fiery eyes to watch it." Then the others took counsel together and said, "Go back again, and wait until the master of the palace is in bed asleep. Then nip his nose and pull his hair." Away the mouse went, and did as they directed her. And the master jumped up very angry, and rubbed his nose and cried, "Those rascally cats are good for nothing at all. They let the mice eat at my very nose and pull my hair off my head." Then he hunted them out of the room, and so the mouse had the best of the game. Next night, as soon as the master was asleep, the mouse crept in again and nibbled at the red silk string to which the stone hung, till down it dropped, and she rolled it along the door. But when it got there, the poor little mouse was quite tired, so she said to the donkey, "Put in your foot and lift it over the threshold." This was soon done, and they took up the stone and set off to the water side. Then the donkey said, "How shall we reach the box?" But the bear answered, "This is easily managed. I can swim very well. And do you, donkey, put your 4 feet over my shoulders. Mind the holdfast, and take the stone in your mouth. As for you, mouse, you can sit in my ear." It was all settled thus, and away they swam. After a time the bear began to brag and boast. "We are brave fellows, are we not, donkey?" And he said, "What do you think?" But the donkey held his tongue and said not a word. "Why don't you answer me?" said the bear. "You must be an ill-mannered brute, not to speak when you are spoken to." When the donkey heard this, he could hold no longer, so he opened his mouth and dropped the wonderful stone. "I could not speak," he said. "Did you not know I had the stone in my mouth? Now it's lost, and that's your fault." "Do hold your tongue and be quiet," said the bear, "and let us think what's to be done." Then the council was held, and at last they called together all the frogs, their wives and families, relations and friends, and said, "A great enemy is coming to eat you all up. But never mind, bring us up plenty of stones, and we'll build a strong wall to guard you." The frogs, hearing this, were dreadfully frightened, and set to work, bringing up all the stones they could find. At last came a large fat frog, pulling along the wonderful stone by the silken string. And when the bear saw it, he jumped for joy and said, Now we have found what we wanted." So he released the old frog from his load, and told him to tell his friends they might go about their business as soon as they pleased. Then the 3 friends swam off again for the box, and the lid flew open, and they found that they were but just in time, for the bread was all eaten, the jug almost empty. But as soon as the good man had the stone in his hand, he wished himself safe and sound in his palace again, and in a moment there he was, with his garden, his stables, his horses, and his 3 faithful friends dwelt with him, and they all spent their time happily and merrily as long as they lived. That was such a cute story. I am a huge animal person, so I really liked that one, and I thought it was really cute. I will read another one. I just have to find one that sounds good. The 7 Ravens, maybe? 316. Okay, I will read the 7 Ravens. There was once a man who had 7 sons, the last of all 1 daughter. Although the little girl was very pretty, she was so weak and small that they thought she could not live, but they said she should not at once be christened. So the father sent one of his sons in haste to the spring to get some water. But the other 6 sons ran with him. Each wanted to be the first drawing the water. So they were in such a hurry that all let their pitchers fall into the well, and they stood foolishly looking at one another, and did not know what to do, for one dared to go home. In the meantime, the father was uneasy, and could not tell what made the young man stay so long. Surely, he said, the whole 7 must have forgotten themselves over some game of play. And when he had waited still longer, and they yet did not come, he flew into a rage, and wished them all turn into ravens. Secretly, he spoke these words when he heard a croaking over his head, and looked up and saw 7 ravens as black as coals flying round and round. Sorry as he was to see his wish so fulfilled, he did not know what was done. He did not know how what was done could be undone, and comforted himself as well as he could for the loss of his 7 sons, with his dear little daughter, who soon became stronger and every day more beautiful. For a long time she did not know that she had ever had any brothers, for her father and mother took care not to speak of them before her. But one day, by chance, she heard the people about her speak of them. "Yes," said they, "she is beautiful indeed, but still 'tis a pity that her brother should have been lost for her sake." Then she was much grieved, and went to her father and mother, and asked if she had any brothers, and what had become of them. So they dared no longer to hide the truth from her, but said it was the will of heaven, and that her birth was only the innocence caused of it. But the little girl mourned sadly about it every day, and thought herself bound to do all she could to bring her brothers back. So she had neither rest nor ease, till at length one day she stole away, and set out into the wide world to find her brothers, wherever they may be, and free them, whatever it may cost her. She took nothing with her but a little ring which her father and mother had given her, a loaf of bread in case she should be hungry, a little pitcher of water in case she should be thirsty, and a little stool to rest upon when she should be weary. Thus she went on, and journeyed till she came to the world's end. Then she came to the sun, and the sun looked much too hot and fiery, so she ran away quickly to the moon. But the moon was too cold and chilly, and said, "I smell flesh and blood this way." So she took herself away in a hurry and came to the stars, and the stars were friendly and kind to her, and each star sat upon his own little stool. But the morning star rose up and gave her a little piece of wood, and said, "If you have not this little piece of wood, you cannot unlock the castle that stands on the glass mountain, and there your brothers live." The little girl took the piece of wood, rolled it up in a little cloth, and went on again till she came to the glass mountain and found the door shut. Then she felt for the little piece of wood, but when she unwrapped the cloth, it was not there, and she saw she had lost the gift of the good star. of the good stars. What was to be done? She wanted to save her brothers, and had no key for the castle of the glass mountain. So this faithful little sister took a knife out of her pocket and cut off her little finger. That was just the right size for the piece of wood she had lost, and put it in the door and opened it. As she went in, a little dwarf came up to her and said, "What are you seeking for?" "I seek for my brothers, the 7 ravens," answered she. Then the dwarf said, "My masters are not home. My masters are not yet home. But if you will wait till they come, pray step in." Now the little dwarf was getting their dinner ready, and he brought their food upon 7 little plates, and their drink in 7 little glasses, and set them upon the table. And out of each little plate their sister ate a small piece, and out of each little glass she drank a small drop. But she let the ring that she had brought with her fall into the last glass. On a sudden she heard a fluttering and a croaking in the air, and the dwarf said, "Here come my masters." When they came in, they wanted to eat and drink, and looked for their little plates and glasses. Then said one after another, "Who has eaten from my little plate, and who has been drinking out of my little glass?" When the 7th raven came to the bottom of his glass and found the little ring, he looked at it and knew that it was his father's and mother's, and said, "Oh, that our little sister would but come! Then we should be free." And when the little girl heard this, for she stood behind the door all the time and listened, she ran forward, and in an instant all the ravens took their right form again, and all hugged and kissed each other and went merrily home. Well, I feel like those 2 stories were very nice, so I am happy with the endings that they gave, and I hope you are feeling nice and relaxed. I will see you again soon.